Hello everyone, it's Keir from IDOS. I'm over here on holiday in the US and I've popped into Crystal Dynamics and I've got some questions here from TombRaiderForums.com and they're going to be answered for you by Eric Lindstrom, who's the creative director on Underworld, and Alex Jones, who's the project producer. So without further ado, here's the first question, and this comes from Pen_OTH_fan, and he wants to know, how long have you been working on this game? Is it since you finished Legend or even earlier?
I was even earlier, actually, because while we were working on development, that we're on execution across all areas of the game. But in the earlier conceptual pre-production phases, I was definitely lurking on the forums and looking at what kinds of things people were saying about Legend and Anniversary, how they reacted to things, what they wanted. One of the biggest things that I got out of it early on was the complaints about how much Legend, I was already logging things that I wanted to do differently. Not so much because we were doing them wrong in Legend, but because we would have the time to pursue things farther than we were able to do in Legend. So we were trying to finish up all of our Legend commitments, but weekends driving home, it was already churning on Underworld.
Yeah, it started for me a couple of months before we actually put Legend out the door, that we were working on budget and manpower projections and all this sort of preliminary planning stuff that you need to do, as well as getting Eric to tee up some of the creative vision of the game.
Okay. And the next question comes from Evan C, who wants to know how important are long-time fans in the development of this game? Are they a deciding factor when it comes to making controversial decisions?
Well, absolutely, but I would say that deciding factor currently is a different scenario, because the game is so far in development. Alistair and Zip were ruining the moment, which was something that I actually was personally responsible for in Legend, because I was the story designer, and we were playing with how much we wanted to hear Lara's voice and her interacting, so we kind of went overboard on it, and we liked what we had, but I definitely missed that sense of isolation, explorer on the top of the world, you're the first one there, you're all on your own, nobody to count on. And so we wanted to find a way to be able to get Lara to express herself, to get that kind of hear her voice and interact with her, but without having the voice constantly chattering over your earpiece.
So the sense of isolation is something we can expect in Underworld?
Absolutely.
Cool. The next question comes from George Croft, and it's quite a tricky one. And he asks, if you could compare Underworld to any classic Tomb Raider game, which would it have most in common with? Which has influenced Underworld the most? Alex, you want to?
I'm going to kick that one right over to Eric.
Alex, you want to answer this one? The reason I don't want to answer this question is because when it comes to the classic Tomb Raider games, I cannot say anything right. I really enjoyed all the early Tomb Raider games, but we did something pretty different when we started again with Legend, in bringing it into a different audience and a new era of gaming, and that was something that was going to change the landscape of Tomb Raider irrevocably. Some fans didn't like it and still don't, and that's unfortunate. We tried to keep all of what made Tomb Raider really vibrant at the time, the exploration, the sense of freedom, the sense of context of you being down in these tombs. So when I think about the early games, I usually spend most of my time in Tomb Raider 1 and Tomb Raider 2 in my head. But to say that Underworld is most like those, if you showed Tomb Raider 1 and Tomb Raider Underworld to someone who didn't know anything about Tomb Raider, they wouldn't say they're alike. They have the same emotional frequencies, I guess, but it's a different gaming community now.
So is it fair to say the root of the game is similar in terms of the isolation you get in Tomb Raider 1? Is that something you were going for when you were making Underworld?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, the next question comes from Disney Princess 20, and she asks, how do you think the experiences you made while and after creating Legend and Anniversary have affected the development of Underworld? So I guess that's kind of asking how much you've learned since you've taken on Tomb Raider.
Well, I'll let Eric go into the zesty, sexy forum creative aspect of it, but from the production side, I didn't have, I was not on Anniversary. That was running concurrently with our pre-production for the most part, but one of the big takeaways for me from Legend, from just a production standpoint, were the ways in which we wanted to front-load design thought as much as possible and get as much work done up front so that we didn't have as much time iterating on the game in 3D in ways that were radical and destructive. And on Legend, I think we came together with a very good game at the end, but the process of getting there was painful, and we have definitely taken efforts to streamline that by trying to front-load design thought and putting an emphasis on having mechanics done earlier so that you can see their practical in-game effects and you know you're working with something fun before you get to final art on everything and have to move stuff around. And well, I think we made a lot of progress in that area. There's still more to do, but I think that was the one big takeaway of coming out of Legend for me.
So when you say front-load design, does that mean look at the bigger picture, like from the off? Or?
Well, on Legend, we were starting over from scratch in a lot of ways, sort of defining what the game was going to be again, what it meant to make a Tomb Raider game, and what the core gameplay values were. So we were operating in a darkened room. So we had the ability to leverage, okay, we basically want to do this game plus this much more. So starting just from that gave us a huge leg up in terms of we knew what game we were making in the main. But even going beyond that and extending it and saying, okay, well, how can we try to make the design more solid up front? How can we get more certain that what we're doing is going to be fun and is going to net out to a good experience such that we don't need to redo art once it's already been finalized, which is a loop that we had gotten into. Any game where you crawl on the art as opposed to run past it, you will have to iterate in 3D in ways that can drive a producer a little batty. But I think we've done a pretty good job of trying to get ahead of that, and I think that is bearing fruit right now. We're actually polishing rather than just trying to get stuff playable.
Cool.
Yeah.
Got any thoughts on that?
Alex pretty much covered it. It's in the action-adventure genre, Tomb Raider is about the hardest game you could possibly make. And the fact that we've done 2 of them, there's hundreds of little lessons here and there that are all pretty boring to listen to, but they all add up to it is really hard to make these kinds of games. And by this being the 3rd one, we can now do it much better and easier than we ever could before.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, the Anniversary team really had almost the experience that you'd like to have straight out the gate, because they didn't do a lot of extending on the feature set, so that from day one they were ready to go and block mesh in a game that was working before, we had to actually go through months of getting the moves done over again to see exactly how they're going to work. So we were much better than Legend. But Anniversary started off with you could actually block mesh out the whole game and start playing it and moving it around in 3D and actually doing an additional layer of checking to make sure it's fun before you started putting art on it. But a game like ours is just irreducibly, you will be iterating in 3D, and so the lesson to take away is how to continue to erode at the amount of iterating you need to do on the back end.
Yeah, and because we have this jump into next gen, that's such a big problem in and of itself. There used to be 3 textures per wall face. Now we've got 12 textures per wall face. That's a big enough hill to climb. If we had to climb that hill and climb the hill of how do you actually make a Tomb Raider game, that'd have been crazy. That's what sinks games into 4-year development cycles. Whereas with us, we knew how to make that kind of game. We could concentrate our effort on making it in next gen.
So the next question comes from Petras, who asks,